This year, we are healing and growing, healing from the strangeness of the past 2 years of the pandemic, from all the assaults on our sense of rightness in the world. This year, we're healing and growing in our understanding of racism and oppression, growing in our desire to live in right relationship, to see and act as all people having inherent worth and dignity. And so to help with all this healing and growing, our educational focus this year, each month we're going to explore an aspect of wellness, beginning now with intellectual wellness and ending with mental wellness in May. Each month, new resources will be on our website for you to explore, so I encourage you to go there to check it out. Intellectual wellness is being open to new ideas, maintaining curiosity and creativity, and making meaning out of your life. As Albert Einstein said, intellectual growth begins at birth and should only cease at death. Now, as Unitarian Universalists, I think we fully embrace the virtue of learning. We are born from people who questioned authority, who asked why things were this way and not that way. This is how we see ourselves in the world. In spiritual exploration classes, we teach children a little mantra with gestures. And so I invite you to do them along with me if you know it. This is the church of the open mind. This is the church of the helping hands. This is the church of the loving heart. Together we care for our earth and work for friendship and peace in the world. This is the church of the open mind. Like all great religious virtues, it is much easier said than lived. Once there was a wise Zen monk. People traveled from far away to seek his help and wisdom in learning the way. And one day a famous scholar comes to see this wise monk. I have come so that you may teach me about Zen, he says. Very well, says the monk. He begins to speak, but the scholar soon interrupts him. And this happens again and again. So the Zen monk suggests they share some tea. The scholar talks as the monk prepares the tea. He keeps talking as the monk pours him a cup of tea. The monk keeps pouring. Soon the cup overflows. Finally, the scholar says, "Stop, can't you see the cup is full?" And the monk smiles. You are like the cup, so full of knowledge, nothing more can be added. Come back to me with an empty cup. It is very easy to be full of knowledge, so sure that we are right and correct. It's very difficult to achieve that Buddhist beginner's mind, open, completely open to new perspectives, because it's lovely to know things, and it's even more lovely to be right and correct. It's human nature to feel like our way is the right way. I saw a t-shirt the other day that said "Smug Canadian," and I felt very seen. And so as people of the Chalice, we say we are the church of the open mind. And I think we need that open mind. We're also to have helping hands and loving hearts. All of those three things work together. We must be open to others to help them. And our mind is most often open when we begin from love and compassion. In this information age, where Google offers us the knowledge of the world at the touch of a screen, we are all constantly overflowing teacups. Knowledge is on offer anytime you want it. Curious about apple growing? Just Google it. Wondering about the state of Japanese politics? Google. The aftermath of the storm of Fiona? Google. It's both wonderful and overwhelming to have so much knowledge available to us. We are cups, said American science fiction writer Ray Bradbury, constantly and quietly being filled. The trick is knowing how to tip ourselves over and let the beautiful stuff out. It's so easy to fill up our minds full and not even notice. And I think that I, at least, sometimes struggle with tipping out that cup. Because in general, I pride myself on my smarts. As we have an often intellectual approach to religion, this sensible, rational, questioning way. It's the better religion. I like it. I became a minister. But I know that that sense of righteousness can get in my way. At times, I need so much to be right that I don't know how to be wrong. Find it easier to condemn those who think differently rather than taking the time to be curious and compassionate. And when I notice myself condemning and judging in a particularly self-satisfied, smug Canadian way, I know it's time to tip out my cup. So I tip the cup for myself when I read and get absorbed into a fictional world, letting go of this life, and I arise out of that book with a fresh perspective. I tip my cup when I get outside and walk under the trees, when I remember how big the earth truly is. And this is intellectual wellness, I think. Finding ways to tip out the cup with humility and curiosity. Letting go of that smug certainty I too often have, and being willing to learn from others and other perspectives, often ones radically different from my own. Is there an area in your life where your teacup is so full you aren't hearing the monks around you? Do you know what you do to tip out your cup? If we can keep our cup moving through the process of being filled up and tipped out over and over again, that's how we develop an open mind. And we need our minds open in this age of information, which is everywhere and always, thanks to Google. And it's also the age of disinformation. It can feel like we're living in the land of Oz. In that children's book and the movie, The Wizard of Oz, the mighty wizard rules all of Oz with his booming voice and great illusions. And when Dorothy gets stranded there, the wizard says he will help Dorothy go home when she fulfills a quest. And after many adventures, Dorothy's successful, but the wizard won't help her get home. He starts making excuses. And Dorothy figures out that the wizard is not so mighty after all. He can't actually help her return home because he's just an ordinary man behind a curtain, hiding behind illusion. I often feel like we're living in a time where we're surrounded by mighty wizards flinging illusions at us. And it's so hard to see the curtain and see what's behind it. It's so hard to see what's illusion and what's fact. So finding the curtain and revealing reality gets easier if we use critical thinking skills when it comes to our information sources. Media literacy groups recommend honing critical thinking in a few ways. To always check any source of information, particularly before you go to share it, just double check. Google it and see where else the information comes up. Go beyond just scanning those often clickbait headlines and images to learn what's actually behind the story, and consider who benefits from the story that is being told and why they might want this story to be told that way. And that critical thinking can also apply to news from major sources as well, not because they share intentional disinformation, but because they can only ever cover one small part of a story because they're trying to cover all the stories. And then finally, we have to be aware of confirmation bias. When information aligns with what we already know or believe or want to believe, we are far more likely to accept it as true. I accept without questioning any article that tells me that chocolate has health benefits. I do not read any further. So as people with open minds, we practice over and over again trying to be humble, curious, and skeptical. And it's hard because when we live in this age of disinformation, a closed mind actually seems like good protection. It's a good defense. I was at a hairdresser's just after the Queen died, getting my hair done. And the woman getting her hair done in the chair next to me asserted that the Queen had actually died weeks earlier, but they hid it because things had to get done first. Her hairdresser noted that the Queen had just met the new British Prime Minister 2 days before her death. The woman said that they knew who the Prime Minister was going to be ages ago, and the photo had been staged weeks earlier. Her hairdresser politely changed the subject. Now, this seems like a particularly silly conspiracy theory, but it has really sort of stayed with me. That there's so much false information and fake news that it feels like we no longer even live in the same reality. And I know over the pandemic, many of you have had similar experiences with relatives over vaccines, over politics, over shutdowns, where it feels like it's impossible to have a conversation. There's an old adage that says falsehoods fly while truth comes limping after. Poor truth is still walking to Sault Ste. Marie, and the lies have already landed in Vancouver. It's hard to catch up. And we all know that responding with the truth and facts doesn't help. Trying to get someone to admit they're wrong only makes it harder to truly talk to each other. And so it ends up feeling like there's no common ground and that others are so completely wrong and thinking that the Queen actually died weeks earlier and they covered it up. At the hairdressers, we were both getting our hair done. But one of us lives in a world where the rich and powerful manipulate the press and public relations to suit their needs, and the other, well, so does the other. There's always something understandable underneath the disinformation and fake news. And often it's a lack of trust with those with power and authority, a history of betrayal by those very powerful people, and a sense of powerlessness and helplessness. There's hurt and worry from the future at times too. And honestly, I often feel all of that as well. On one level, that woman wasn't wrong. The rich and powerful absolutely do manipulate the world to suit them. Corporate CEOs don't go to jail for their crimes. Politicians cover up scandals. The royal family is rife with strange things that they pay off people to do. It's all true. So while I am sure the Queen died as reported, I have grown up privileged and comfortable, and I do have a fair amount of faith in the system because it's worked reasonably well for me. I do also see that not everyone else has that faith for very, very good reasons. Underneath the acceptance of fake news are real feelings and genuine concerns. So if we are, as we teach our kids, the church of the open mind and the helping hands and the loving hearts, then we have a responsibility to keep those minds open and to try and find those shared concerns. Because we are all in this together, interdependent, whether we like it or not. So we can try to seek common ground to dig deeper past those crazy theories to the why people feel such need to believe them, believe some of these strange things. And maybe we'll get to some of the worry and fear and sorrow and confusion underneath. And we might be able to begin together there. Let us seek intellectual wellness by challenging ourselves to keep our minds open, curious, skeptical, and compassionate. So say we all.